Hi, today we're going to talk about food and how to establish what food is right for you. What to eat is the question I get asked the most in my practice. And this is a topic I find most people seem to be interested in when it comes to health. But at the same time, it's the most overwhelming topic with enormous amount of information in the media, which rather gets contradictory and misleading. No wonder sometimes it gets challenging to know where to start, how to make a change, let alone a sustainable change. So my very first answer to this question would be, there is no single diet formula for you that I can recommend that will certainly guarantee your perfect health. In fact, the only formula I want to give you is to learn how not to follow a diet formula, but instead focusing on your own very unique biochemistry, to eat foods that bring and keeps you in balance, not your friend, not your neighbor, not even your mother, but you. In my clinical experience, I learned that there is no one diet and lifestyle that fits all. In fact, we are all very different and unique, so why even follow the same program? Personalization is the key here, and it depends on a variety of factors. For the purpose of today's talk, I'm going to share with you in very, very general terms what I look at when making nutritional recommendations. So rule number one is, what are your goals? Are you trying to lose weight? Are you having difficulties gaining weight? Are you trying to address a specific health conditions? Perhaps you are trying to achieve a better athletic performance. You might be just curious about the latest diet trends. You got the point, right? First, we need to understand what goals are and why we want to get where we want to get. So rule number two would be, we want to work with the body and not against the body. And what I mean by that is that, for example, you are trying to lose weight. So you heard that restricting calories will cause the body to get its energy from the fat cells. So you can lose more fat and get much slimmer. Now you start restricting the calories without realizing that you're actually restricting your body from the resource it needs to run all the necessary chemical reactions. Not very long after, the results of deficiencies become vivid, with signs like lack of energy, mood swings, chronic tiredness, some headaches, excessive cravings, and so on. So this is an example of working against the body, as your body won't pay you back with good health after all this. Another common extreme is when people tell me, but I really have this craving for chips or for the ice cream. Doesn't it really mean that my body needs it? Shouldn't I just listen to it? It might be for the occasion or two, but again, long-term effects of these very ultra-processed foods to satisfy the craving won't end up in good health. There are always a deeper reason for the craving that the body is trying to get your attention with. Is we need to eat real food. Let's take an example of your desire to lose weight again. So your friend lost lots of pounds following a keto diet, right? So you go to the store and buy all those packages that say keto friendly, hoping that they might help you lose weight as well. However, they are usually filled with artificial coloring, preservatives, and other chemicals, which might not only prevent you from losing weight, but also add lots of toxicity, lots of toxic burden for your body. So real food means something that you can pick from trees or dig from the ground, something that you can hunt or fish. In other words, eating food which is most closely to nature. There are, of course, some exceptions to that, but believe me, it's just a few of them. And that brings me to the rule number 4, which is remove, just a second, remove toxic stuff from your diet. Nutrition is not only about what we are adding to the diet, but also what we are removing from it. It's a very important rule to remember. So if you are trying to improve a health condition and you are adding all those trans fats, ultra-processed foods, rancid vegetable oils, genetically modified food, all those colorings and preservatives that usually present in the packaging of the food, can you imagine the burden you are putting on the body? And even if your goals have nothing to do with improving a health condition, you still don't want to create a toxic internal environment in your body, which will eventually result in a health challenge. Removing any food intolerances also fall in this category for the very simple reason they create stress and inflammation in the body, which is toxic on its own. The next thing to take into consideration is your ancestry and the place you reside in. You must agree with me that the diet of someone living in the North Pole will be different from the one living in the hot tropical climate, right? Also, if your ancestors survived mostly on animal produce, but you decided to become complete vegan, it might affect your biology sooner or later. And the reason for that is that we are not equipped to mutate that quickly. It takes generations and generations and sometimes centuries for the body to adapt. And then the fun part starts. Now we are going to identify your biotype based on your measurements, the structure of your bones, your overall presentation and tendencies, the way you react to life stressors, and so much more. This includes identifying your dominant gland, or sometimes your several dominant glands. Those are the biochemical factories in the body that produce hormones, which regulate the chemical reactions happening all over the body. They also determine your individual physical, mental, and emotional characteristics. They're very important to take into consideration, and it's a lot of fun when we start identifying them with clients. Here we also look at your age group, your lifestyle, the level of your physical activity, the type of work you do, whether it's a night shift job or a job that requires prolonged hours of sitting in the car or traveling through the time zone, a sedentary job in front of the screen, or a position that requires standing up for many hours per day. We also consider your eating habits and preferences. Do you eat mostly at home or out? Do you cook from scratch or rely on ready-made meals? So all these create a broader picture of what nutritional approach will most certainly work for you. And then we can move on to the next rule, which is digestive capacity. This is super important, and it's always on the top of my priority list when addressing anything to do with nutrition and diet in general. The reason is that no matter how valuable and nutritious the food you eat, if you can't digest and absorb it, if you can't absorb all the nutrients and all the goodness from it, not only it won't make any sense, but it will also create a burden to the body, another toxin for your body to deal with. So here we need to make sure that your digestive capacity is at optimum. First, we want to make sure that the stomach produces enough stomach acid to break down food. Then we need to have sufficient bile production. The bile, which is what is called the golden liquid of the body. It must flow correctly to protect the intestines from getting burned by the acid. It deals with emulsifying fats so they don't become rancid, creating additional toxin in the body. And they also aid with absorption of minerals and vitamins. Those are the resources that the body needs to run all its chemical reactions. Although there are other aspects of the digestive system which are important, but those two are crucial when we decide to work with diet. So you might ask, how is it all relevant to the food choices we make, right? So let's bring up the same example of your friend being on keto diet and easily losing weight. So you might know that keto involves reducing carbohydrates and eating a bigger quantities of proteins and fats. However, if you can't digest proteins and fats because you have some digestive malfunction, eating them to lose weight will cause you to gain even more weight, as they will end up as a toxin in your fat cells. Also, when the body cannot access all the nutrients from food you eat because there is either not enough stomach acid or the bile is stagnant and can't flow correctly, or both, it will scream for more food, causing you those cravings when you can't just stop eating, putting even more weight on. So in that situation, the priority would be to address the malfunction of the digestive system before even starting to think and introduce too many proteins and fats into the diet. And there are very easy and natural ways, first to check whether your digestive capacity is up to speed, and then if it's not, to simply correct it. If you are the one who is experiencing any type of the symptoms of belching, gas, burning, acid reflux, chronic constipation or diarrhea, low appetite or excessive appetite, feeling heavy in the belly after meals, you might be dealing with some sort of digestive capacity malfunction. And it's really, really advisable to work on it before changing your diet habits and introducing any new ideas of sort of following a diet plan. Rule number 9 is looking at the different physiological markers to identify your individual biochemistry. And I will give you a few examples of what I mean so you get an idea. For example, fasting blood sugar. This is an indicator of how the body processes glucose. When its value is higher than normal, it might mean that the process of glucose is inefficient. And if you continue consuming too many sugary meals, too many carbohydrate-rich foods, it may cause pancreatic cells to get tired of constantly producing hormone, which is called insulin, to deal with its big amount of sugar in the blood. So it creates something which is called insulin resistance, which in turn, if not addressed properly, leads to diabetes. Another extreme of poor glucose metabolism in the blood is when the fasting blood sugar marker is below normal. Then it might mean that the process of glucose in the body is too fast, it's too aggressive. So if you still eat too many carbs in the same meal, it creates a sugar spike and then a rapid sugar dip, leaning towards something called hypoglycemia. And the problem with this roller coaster is that if you don't have enough mineral resource in the body and also have this sugar crash, it will create stress in the system by releasing stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol to the blood. The byproduct of that is the safety mechanism of the body to store fat in the fat cells, just in case you ran out of resource again. So not only it may cause you feeling fatigued, you might feel different cravings again, feeling mood swings or feeling anxious or fearful, but also it will prevent you from losing weight. So knowing the value of this marker is important in deciding on the type and amount of carbohydrates you would benefit from to work in alignment with your body and not against it. And you don't need to check this marker very often. Sometimes it's sufficient to check it once and then just follow up with that, if it's a normal range, to follow up with that a little bit later. Next step would be identifying the state of the minerals in your system. This is evaluated by the value of the resting and standing blood pressure. Minerals are part of what thickens up the blood, which in turn raises the blood pressure. So when the systolic blood pressure is below what is considered normal, it means that there is not enough mineral reserve in the system. We get minerals from food, so it might mean that we are not breaking up the food correctly and not absorbing it to get the minerals out. It might serve as an indication of some sort of malfunction in the digestive capacity. And if we couple this low mineral state with low fasting blood sugar, the body then will scream for more food, especially for the food which is easier to digest, such as simple carbs like sweets, fruits, fruit juices, pastries, other baking products, white refined junk, so to say, to quickly get to the bloodstream. And then you might feel even more cravings, even more moody, even more anxious, and experience energy dips, insomnia, and of course, difficulty shading all those extra pounds of weight. So what's the solution? In that case, you might want to leave some carbs in the diet to provide the body with the necessary resource while addressing the digestive malfunction of the system. And only then you can manage reducing the amount of carbs while increasing the numbers of proteins and healthy fats in your diet. Saying that, I don't mean jumping on starchy, sugary foods like processed white pasta or breads or all those like baked products that will create a sugar spike, but focusing more on the medium chain carbs like sweet potatoes, squashes, parsnips, yams, some root vegetables, other types, of root vegetables, and whole grains in limited amounts, of course, but there are slowly releasing sugar into the bloodstream as opposed to the refined processed food. All this can work, but believe it or not, it might raise another question. Can you process the carbohydrates correctly? And if not, you remember this insulin we spoke about before? It will be triggered to be released again, causing inflammation, stress, and eventually insulin resistance if it gets overworked. So then the diet recommendation would be to still leave some medium chain carbs in the diet, but with bigger intervals between eating them. So it will allow the insulin to recover before more sugars stream into the blood. So you can see that based on your own individual chemistry, we can decide how many carbs you need, what type of carbs you would benefit from, and with which frequency it is better for you to have them. Another important marker that we check is catabolic-anabolic imbalance, which is to do with the permeability of the cell membrane. Most of you probably familiar with the gut permeability, but cell membrane also has its own permeability, which allows nutrients to flow between inside of the cell and outside of the cell. This is quite sophisticated subject in the food metabolism, but for the purpose of this talk, I will try to explain it in a more simplistic way. First of all, this parameter is measured by the pH of the urine and saliva, in addition to the values of other physiological markers, some of which we already covered. So during the day, the body is more in the catabolic state, breaking down tissues, creating more energy, keeping us going, so we can proceed with life, right? On the other hand, at night, when we rest, the body is more in the anabolic state, when rest, restoration, and repair of the tissues happen. So both of those states are valid, but sometimes we might get stuck in one state more than another, and it creates some sort of imbalance. When someone is in a more catabolic state, they may experience symptoms like insomnia, loose stools, and insulin resistance, for example. I'm not saying that those symptoms are the only reasons for being stuck in the catabolic state, but what I'm saying is that it could be one of the reasons. Alternatively, anabolic imbalance can be characterized with symptoms like very dry, difficult to pass stools, feeling of anxiety and irregular heartbeat, and in fact also insomnia, but the type of insomnia, the way it will manifest might be slightly different to that of the catabolic state. So how is it relevant to the foods we eat? Well, certain foods with certain ways of being cooked and consumed are known to correct those imbalances. I'll just give you an example. A hard-boiled egg, let's say olive oil and salmon, are more pro-catabolic, helping to bring to balance someone who is stuck in the anabolic state. On the other side, a runny egg, butter, cream, and fresh cheese eating especially in the evening, are very pro-anabolic, helping someone reverse back to a more anabolic state. Another very, very important factor is breathing rate. This is the marker of importance as it gives the indication of how the body uses oxygen, or whether the body is leaning towards being too acidic or too alkaline. Either of those states are preferable. The balance between the two is the goal. So when the breath rate is on the higher side, it might mean that the person is oxidizing proteins too quickly and burning off carbohydrates too fast. In other words, the person might prefer carbs as a first source of fuel for the body before starting to digest fats. In the ideal scenario, we would like to burn sugar when it's available, but when it's unavailable, burning fat will be also an option. So for that situation, eating dark meat, like steak, for example, which is very dense and takes time and energy to digest, will slow down the oxidation process while supplying slower release of fuel to the body, leaving you full for much longer periods of time instead of creating cravings, which end up with quick fixes like fast, junk food. On the other side, if your breath rate is on the lower side of the scale, you might have difficulties oxidizing protein. So faster release of fuel is required. In that case, eating white meat might be the better option for you, as it's easier to break down than steak, giving your body all the necessary resources at a much faster speed. There are, of course, additional, more advanced markers we bring up as we go along and progress in reaching our health goals, but they're a bit more complicated and not in the scope of today's general discussion. So I hope I gave you some insight of how we can adjust food choices to the body chemistry to work with the body and not against the body. And if you think about it, the natural byproduct of this comprehensive personalized approach is not only better vitality and overall well-being, but also correction of imbalances, so you can enjoy a bigger variety of foods while working alongside your chemistry, but most importantly, finding your own body's perfect fuel in the most natural ways. So, if you have any questions or interested to learn more or to book a session, please get in touch by visiting us at www.healthwithinent.com or emailing or calling us at healthwithin@gmail.com or the number provided on this slide. There is an option also to book a free discovery call where you can see if what we offer can help you reach your health goals. And the link for the free discovery call is on the website as well. So feel free to check it out. And in the meantime, thank you. And have a very happy eating experience, everyone. And see you very soon. Bye for now.